G'day everybody, my name's Josh Rankin and I'm the course coordinator for the Bachelor of Education Secondary Health and Phys Ed. Could I just get a couple of people to either switch their mic on and say yes, or just punch into the chat box there for me if you can hear my voice coming through? G'day Matt, I can see you got your hand up there. Beautiful. I can see a few hands going up. Is there an option to jump into a chat box and let me know whether sound is coming through? Okay, Scarlett, I can see that you've got your hand up there. Is there an opportunity for you to chuck your microphone on or punch into the chat box on the side? Good old online, isn't it? I can see lots of hands going up, so a lot of people raising or lowering their hands. If there's an opportunity to jump in the chat box, that would be great. Okay, what I might do is I will kick on with the session there, because I can see that I've got lots of people putting their hand up potentially inside of the session. What I'll do is make sure the session's being recorded. I've got some vocals going through, and then what you might be able to do is, if you have a look at the bottom right hand section of your screen, there's a little chat option there, and if people are wanting to put comments in, they can do that. If I see people drastically leaving the session, I'll know that the sound potentially isn't coming through. and I'll have a little look to see if I can make some adjustments there. What I'm going to do with you though is share my screen, and I might jump in and out of that as I start to see different things come through in the chat. Okay, so as I said, my name's Joss Rankin. I'm the course coordinator for the Bachelor of Education, Secondary Health and Phys Ed, and that is the degree, hopefully, that all of you have enrolled in. This session here is an opportunity for me to provide some information for you about the degree, but also about studying at university more broadly. If you do have questions along the way, we'll see if we can get that chat box actually working for you. And if you would like to, I'm more than happy for people to jump in as well, and turn their microphone on and contribute with some questions along the way. So firstly, I'd like to just acknowledge that I'm coming to you today from Ghana land, that I want to pay my respects to traditional custodians upon this land that we meet, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I'd like to acknowledge that Ghana beliefs are as relevant to the Ghana people today as they have been for thousands of years. Okay, so really quickly, this degree that you've actually enrolled into, oops, sorry, I've got one email coming through from someone that's in the meeting. This might be related to where the sound's coming through or not. Okay, thank you very much, Jaden. Let me know that the chat box isn't working. So if you get the opportunity, Jaden, just send through an email to me to see whether you can actually see my chats that are coming through in the chat box. And if that's the case, what I'll do is I'll stick my email address into that chat box there, and people can send through emails as we go. Okay, there's my email address there, and we'll be able to get some bits and pieces coming through. Okay, in regards to the degree itself, there's a range of different people that you'll see along the way. I myself will actually be taking you in your first year foundations of physical education topic, which will be fantastic because I'll get to see you all in first year, first semester through the start of specifically your physical education studies. But I've got a range of other people there that you will see across the 4 years within your degree. Associate Professor Shane Pill is one of our experts in curriculum and pedagogy, and he'll be really closely linked with you in your curriculum studies as you move towards your placements and other experiences that you have in and around schools. And at the bottom in the middle there, I've got Mr. Christian Grokey, who very similarly will work really closely with you in your curriculum studies, but more closely related with health education. Across the top there, we've got a range of people that have different areas of expertise. So Dr. Sam Elliott works really closely with sport parenting, participation in sport and retention. You'll see him in a range of topics, particularly across your first and third years. Dr. Kate Ridley is our expert in physical activity and participation, and Professor Murray Drummond is our director of the SHAPE Research Centre. Across the bottom, we've got different people like Deb, who's really closely aligned with sports sociology and athletes. Kim will take you in relation to some of the things relevant for your senior secondary physical education around strength and conditioning and functional anatomy. Then we've also got Dr. Steph Vallado, which rounds out our health team, looking at health education as well as public health. There'll be a range of things in this presentation that you're not necessarily going to remember straight off of the bat, and that's perfectly fine. That's completely understandable. Beautiful. Thanks for letting me know, Jaden. So feel free, anybody, just to send through emails of questions as they come through. I've got another couple of screens here that I'll keep managing. I understand that you're not going to remember a lot of the things that actually occur in this presentation. There's two really good aspects to that. One is that the presentation is being recorded, so you'll get the opportunity to jump back in and have a look at that presentation later down the track. and I'll point you right at the end of the presentation as to where that will actually be. But the other thing is to note that these people are here to support you as well, and that as you get information, what you need to know in your studies will develop and evolve as you progress through each of the semesters, each of the weeks, across the 4 years, and realistically staff do a really good job of supporting you through that process. There'll be a range of other people that you'll obviously meet along the way as well. So I've introduced you very briefly with their photos to the people that are really closely aligned with the health and physical education within your degree. But there's a really big portion of your degree as well. And there'll be instances where you think these are matching really nicely, because we actually embed your educational studies in health and physical education, and you get opportunities to embed your health and physical education in your direct educational studies. But you'll meet a range of other people across different topics. So we refer to subjects that you select as topics here, but also in relation to things very specific to the degree that you're undertaking, particularly that it is an initial teacher education degree. So a degree that's designed to have you registered as a teacher with the TRB by the time that you actually finish. Beautiful. I'll have a little play around in a second as well when I get you to think about something as to whether I can get that chat box actually open for you. So a couple of these people's names will be really important. So Miss Jackie Thompson is our absolute extraordinaire in relation to everything placements. She will organise the placements that you have in school sites, and she'll support you through that process of what you actually need to do and to complete in those experiences. Dr. Anne Spencer has been doing a lot of work recently around land type. So being a teacher education degree, we have a government mandate to have you actually sit the land type tests, or our literacy and numeracy tests, for newly registering teachers. Anne's done an amazing job of actually setting up a bit of a support program to make sure that you are achieving what you can within those particular tests. Associate Professor Kerry Bisica is our Dean of Education, so somebody that's kind of in charge of and supporting of students in their studies. And Kerry Bisica actually shares that role with Shane Pill, and Shane Pill was one of the people on our previous slides around your sport and curriculum pedagogy. And I work really closely with Dr. Troy Peachnick. So Troy Peachnick is in charge of a range of different secondary degrees. So a lot of the things that you do in your health and physical education specific degree on the educational study side of things will be really similar to what students do if they're not studying health and physical education as well. And Troy and I work closely to make sure that that's a fairly seamless experience for everybody involved. So realistically, the main things that I will be doing in this session, or having a bit of a touch on, is a few things around getting you ready for university. So we'll have a look at getting your essentials sorted, making sure you make the most of the next week and the weeks following in relation to orientation. And I also want you to know that there is a range of support networks here available at the university, depending on what your particular situation is in coming into this experience as well. And I'll point you in those directions. So in terms of getting your essentials sorted, one of the first things to do is get your student ID card up and ready. And this is something that you can actually request online. A lot of the things that I've got in this presentation will provide links for you to be able to go and access what you need to access to get yourself started and sorted. But the other thing that we've designed in this college is a little video that takes you through some of these processes as well. And at the end of the presentation, I've got a little link to that video that you can actually jump into. So getting your student ID card is fairly simple, but it's something that's really useful because you'll need your student ID card to be able to open certain areas of the university if you've got something specific to you, for printing, access to the library, but then any of the discounted things that you get as a student, like the fringe that we've got on at the moment. So really useful to actually have for a range of reasons. One of the first things, once you've got all that sorted, is making sure that you have enrolled in your topics. So topics, like I said, are our subjects, what we refer to as subjects, and your topics generally are what we would refer to as being 4.5 units. It refers to kind of the size of the topic and what's involved in it. And a standard full-time load is to have 4 topics that you're enrolled in per semester. So that's something that you can have a little bit of a look at. What I'm going to do is have a quick look to see whether I can actually make some adjustments for you to be able to jump into the chat box. But while I do that, what I'd like you to do is think about what the topics are that you've enrolled in, or whether you actually haven't been able to enroll in those topics along the way. Okay, I think I've solved the problem with the chat box of someone. Yeah, look at that. It's working. Thank you, Caleb. Olivia, Bronny, awesome. Looks really good. Well, that might be a really good opportunity just for us to pause for a second as well. And I can see Kian in there too. I've actually worked with Kian previously, so that's fantastic to see him in on that chat box. One thing that would be really good is if anyone's got any questions at this point, it would be great to chuck that in around the enrolment into your topics. But it'd also be good if a couple of people could just make comment, you know, what are you excited about in terms of coming to university? Or are there any major concerns in the front of your mind right at the start of this presentation that I can look to actually address as I go through these slides and hopefully draw your attention to those, or whether I can make note for myself that I haven't got that in the presentation yet. So take 1 minute, a couple of comments in there would be fantastic. What are you looking forward to? Do you know what I'm talking about in terms of enrolling? And are there some concerns at the front of your mind? That's good, Scarlett. Great little addition there. Excited for uni life. That's good. Oh, fantastic, Bronny. I don't understand what it is to be a mum, but I understand what it is to be a parent. And the other day I had a really important meeting at university and it just needed to be cancelled. I had one child in for surgery, and when he was out of surgery at 11:30, I got a phone call from the school saying that the other one had split his head open. So back to the hospital and a glued head at the end of that. So I and many of the people here are fully aware of what that balance between parent life is. It's a really good opportunity there, Bronny, for me to kind of draw your attention to that idea that yes, that full-time load is your kind of standard 4 topics per semester. But there are some really important things to understand about part-time studies and what that actually means. Now, we don't have, from what I have been able to see in the enrolments, have too many international students, but part-time loads can have impacts on visas and things like that. That's really important to know about. If anybody has connection with Centrelink and benefits from Centrelink, knowing what is required of you around how many topics you need to study to be able to qualify for certain Centrelink payments. But the other thing to note is that if you are genuinely a part-time student, and our classification of part-time is 2 topics or less per semester, or that 9 units or less per semester, it is an opportunity for you to be able to enter into classes that may be full but fit your timetable better. And that might seem funny in working with part-time students, that then, you know, maybe you wouldn't need to manipulate that. But the idea is that we recognize that you might go part-time for a range of reasons. And that manipulating your timetable can be really important as well. So a few things to keep in mind there. Keen to go back to studying, that's really good. Breaks from year 12, focus around the future. Get to know people. It's a really great one to talk about, Olivia, and something that's been a real pull for us in the design of these orientations. And to be perfectly honest, we really like the opportunity to be able to meet face-to-face right from the word go in orientation. But what I can tell you is that for all of you doing Bachelor of Ed Health and PE specifically, the topic that you have with me, Foundations of Physical Education Studies, we are working on how we make sure you get some of that face-to-face learning opportunity. It's really important, one, for that kind of social life around university, but what we do in Health and Phys Ed is naturally quite practical. So that's really important too. Yeah, great, Bronny, doing 2 topics. So what you'd be able to do is inquire in terms of if you had any clashes around timetables and particular classes were full, that's a great example of where you would actually be able to request to be in a class that may be appearing as full. Yeah, good question, Bailey. I'll jump to textbooks in a little bit. And what I can tell you is that staff generally try to organise their topics to support you to not have to necessarily buy loads and loads of textbooks, but we actually just get you organised with things that you can access online or via the library when those opportunities arise. I'll just address one more of those kind of questions or concerns, and then I'll start moving through some more of the slides. And it's great that we've got that chat box open, and I'm really pleased that people are jumping in with lots of information and lots of questions. So a couple of people have said, yeah, nervous about getting lost at campus. And it's one of those things, you can access maps for the university quite easily. So if you type into Google Flinders University campus map, you'll get one. But what you'll learn quite quickly is that the Bedford Park campus, which is the main campus of Flinders University, is actually structured around the central lake. And where that central lake sits, you've got a walking path, and all of the buildings are situated around that walking path. And then outside of the buildings are all of the car parks. So in the first couple of weeks, you'll feel really lost. And I remember 5 years or 6 years ago when I came for my interview at Flinders University, I felt like I was in a different world. But once you're on campus and you find your way inside of the buildings, you'll actually get this real sense of everything being centralized by the lake, with the social components to the university at what we'd refer to as the bottom of the hill or at the bottom of the lake. We've got the pub, we've got the hub, we've got the restaurant, and heaps of food and things to consider. And then once you head up the hill, we've got lots of the learning spaces. In week 1, I'll also introduce you to the Sturt Campus. So the Sturt Campus is a bit further down the hill. It's about a 10-minute walk between Sturt and the Bedford Park Campus. And it's where a lot of the health and physical education practical topics are held out of. Yes, there is parking payments on campus, Josh, both for staff, students, but also visitors as well. I don't believe there is parking payments during O Week. I would need to double check that, but I've got some parking information coming up in the session a little bit later. I'll keep moving through some of these slides here and hopefully answer a range of those questions, and I'll open up to other questions at different times as we go as well. So textbooks is one of those things to get yourself sorted. Each of your topics will identify in what we call their Flinders Learn Online page what the textbooks are required that are actually there. So what you can do is when you log in to Flow, Flinders Learn Online, each of the topics will have their own little web page, and it will indicate to you there what the required textbooks actually are. I can tell you that for Health and PE 1530, so your Foundations of Physical Education Studies, you won't necessarily need to buy a textbook. So I provide the opportunity for you to go to a free download, and the other texts that we do use closely, you can access through our library for free. So it's really important to have a look into what the library offers as completely accessible now that you are a student of the university as well. And it is one of the questions that you can ask your topic coordinators for each of the topics once you come into those lessons right from week 1. Your Flow pages, those Flinders Learn Online pages, which is where the hub of information is for each of the subjects or each of the topics, they are live all the way across your university. They will become live and accessible for students enrolled in the topic 1 week before the topic begins. So for us, with university starting next week, today is 1 week before. So you'll actually be able to, after this session, log into Flow and have a little bit of a look, and you'll see I've got a welcome video there on our Foundations of Physical Education page, and it will give you some of the answers to some of these questions around where is Sturt Campus and what do those things do. In relation to kind of transport and how to get here and what to do once you're here, we do now have an extended railway line that comes into the Flinders University. So if you're catching the railway line from the city, it takes 22 minutes. There are a range of different ways that you can get to Flinders University. I myself actually live at Tea Tree Gully, so I live an incredibly long way from the Flinders University campus, and I have a bus that goes from the Golden Grove village, goes into Tea Tree Plaza, and comes directly to Flinders with no changeovers. The G40, so if you're someone that does live out in that northeastern region, The G40 is almost exactly an hour from the interchange at Tea Tree Plaza, both ways, regardless of the traffic, because of the O-Bahn that's available. Driving into campus will require you to access parking in one way or another. So if you're parking on campus, there's a couple of ways that you can go about accessing a parking permit. There are very few physical ticket machines. So don't imagine going in and finding ticket machines like you might along Rundle Street or things like that and buying a ticket. It's mostly electronically set up. So really important that you see that all of the car parks are either opportunities to park all day, or some car parks are dedicated for 2 hours. It's fairly clearly labelled which ones are which, but don't get caught going to a 2-hour car park and planning on staying there all day, because it is monitored for fines and things like that. The two main ways that you can think about getting your access to parking are either paying per kind of park that you come in and take, and there is an app called Cello Park. Now, in a little video that I will direct you to, we explain all of the information around parking in Cello Park, but Cello Park allows you to start your timer for when you're parking and then end it once you're actually finished. It will time out at the end of the day if you forget to time it out. Or you can jump online to your Okta site. So once you actually log in as a student, you've got this portal to kind of all of the important bits of information known as Okta. In there, you can access and purchase what we call a V permit. So a permit that will cover you for either half a year or a full year. I don't know what the exact maths is on it, but it tends to be that if you're at uni for 3 to 5 or 4 to 5 days per week, the V permit ends up being better. But if you are there for less, and you can double check the maths yourself, that doing kind of the pay per park works out better for you. Yeah, great advice, Kian. Have a look online beforehand. Olivia, if you're in Salisbury, depending on how long it takes you to get to either the Golden Grove Village or the Tea Tree Plaza interchange, the G40 would work quite well. Otherwise, the train from Salisbury into the city and then out to Flinders on that Flinders direct line tends to be quite a quick way of going about that as well. Once you're on campus, I'm a big advocate for actually walking around campus, and Kian might be able to chip in there as well. I like to actually dedicate 15 minutes to run from Sturt Campus up to the top, or walk from Sturt up to the top if I've got a bit of break time, because there's actually a beautiful little gully that sits between the two campuses with pine trees and then some kind of native forest as well that you can walk through, or you can go straight over a big bridge and into the campus between 10 and 15 minutes. But there is a loop bus that leaves at fairly regular intervals that travel from Sturt Campus up to Bedford Park Campus, and we'll also go out to what we call Tonsley Campus, which is kind of our engineering hub out on South Road, which is a little bit further away. So there are a few options to getting around campus as well. Really good question, Archie. So once you've actually enrolled in your topics and they provide the room numbers and they say where those topics are, that will give you an indication of where those classes are, and they will state kind of Bedford Park Campus, Sturt Campus. But in each of the room numbers, they indicate the buildings in which the classes are. So for instance, if you had a lecture, it's a really bad example at the moment because lectures will be online this year, but if you had a lecture in the Education Building Lecture Theatre, the room that's allocated will be coded EDU for education. Then there'll be a number 1, which is the level of the building that the room is in, and then there'll be a room number. So in that case of the lecture theatre, it would be EDU 1 for the level and 01 for the room number within that building. There'll be a couple of different options, Olivia, so depending on the topic. So for instance, in Foundation Studies of Physical Education, I've actually gone and recorded a bunch of the lectures ready for you to go. Some of them will be in Collaborate, which is the platform that you're in right now. We tend not to use Zoom at the university because it doesn't necessarily have the security settings available that the university requires us to use. Okay, if I go through a little bit of this information, what I'll do is I'll come back to the chat box kind of at the end of each section just to make sure I get some of this information across. So there are a range of scholarships at the university as well. It's worth just jumping on and having a look. It's not one of those things where it thinks, right, these are only reasons that scholarships exist. It's only if you've got an ATAR above, you know, this amount. There are a range of different scholarships for different circumstances. So my advice would simply be just jump on. It's going to take you a couple of minutes to have a look at what scholarships are available, and they do actually update year by year as to what's being offered. Wi-Fi on university, so being a student at the university and being enrolled, you have access to the free Wi-Fi that comes with that. The network that you'll see is the Eduroam Network. It's actually the same network if you go between universities as well. So if you happen to be on, say, UniSA's site in the city or something like that, Eduroam is a network that's used across the universities. You use your FAN as your username. So that's your Flinders authentication number. And for all of you, it will start with the first 4 letters of your surname. So for myself, as Joss Rankin, it would be R-A-N-K, and then there's a number allocated to you to make sure that it's your FAN alone. So if you don't know what your FAN is, that would be something to have a look at in your enrollment information. Your FAN is kind of your gateway to everything. It's how you access your student card, it's how you'll log into things, etc., etc. And then you'll have the password that's been provided to you that, you know, you log into all of our systems for is the same password for your Wi-Fi. It's not a separate password. Yeah, also into your email as well. Thanks, Kian. One thing I find really interesting is that we get to O week and week 1 and week 2, and we throw heaps of information at you. So what's really important to recognize is there is lots of stuff that you'll hear that you go, I don't know what he's talking about. And often the example of that is the multitude of acronyms that you'll see. And I've already thrown a couple of at you to this point with flow and those sorts of things. It is important to get familiar with what those acronyms are, but the point is, don't be afraid to ask. If someone starts saying these things and you don't know what they're talking about or what they mean, just ask, and people are very helpful in terms of providing that information back to you. These are just some examples of some of the terminology that you'll see right from the beginning. So Flow, our Flinders Learn Online, the kind of web pages that are structured around the topics. Your FAN, which you use to log in with, your Flinders authentication number. SAMs are what we call our statement of assessment methods. These are like the final say of what is assessed in each topic. So for each topic that you do, you will have access through the flow page to a statement of assessment methods. It tells you what things are worth. It gives you a brief description of the assignment. It tells you how many assignments you have. And then each topic will then provide more detailed information about what it is that you're actually doing. Yeah, really good question, Archie. I will jump in on that one now. So HLP 1530, my topic has a number of locations on the timetable. It might say a room as well as something like tennis court or oval or gym. In all of those instances where you've got 2 things listed, those locations are actually right next to each other, and we use both of the locations. I will send you in the first week, I'll send you at the end of this week specific information about exactly where to meet. But keep in mind that you won't be lost. If you're standing on the tennis court, I'll see you from the room. Or if you're standing on the oval, I'll see you from the room. So I'll give you that exact detail as we go through. SEPSWA is the acronym for our college. So you are enrolled into the College of Education, Psychology and Social Work. They're kind of the working with people degrees, working with people in that educational and development settings. You will have topics that are core to your degree, and you'll have one space in our degree to actually elect between a couple of different topics. It's important to know the requirements of cores and electives. If you do happen to fail a core topic, you absolutely need to repeat those topics because they're topics that are accredited to passing the degree. In some instances, people have failed electives before. Those are times when you can go, you know what, this elective's not for me, I'll pick a different one. But I'm actually hoping that we don't have too many instances where we need to look through that opportunity for following up on fails and things like that. Like I said before, we call our subjects topics. At some other universities, if you're someone that's been to one before, they may call them courses. We refer to them as topics. What we call courses are your degrees. So your course is the Bachelor of Education, Secondary Health and Phys Ed. One of the topics you'll do in semester 1 is Foundation Studies in Physical Education. Okta is the kind of central platform where you can get access to a range of different locations, and Ask Flinders will be an important portal for you to remember because it's often the first point of contact in regards to asking questions about your enrolment and things you need support for as a student generally, as opposed to specifically within each of the topics. Right through our orientation week, and I really like that we get the opportunity to do our welcomes in week one, on the first day of this week. It's a good opportunity because there are things occurring right throughout the rest of this week and then into Connect Wellbeing and Skills Week. COVID requirements have made us kind of think on our feet a little bit and make adjustments as we go, but there are a range of on-campus events still on offer at the university, even today and right throughout the rest of this week. So at the bottom of the screen there is a link to the orientation website, and it's really handy if you jump in and have a look at those events and design your planner around what you think you would like to get out of your orientation. Keep in mind that orientation is not just this week. So for the next 3 weeks, weeks 1 to 3 of the semester, we have things really specifically dedicated to connecting with university and each other, looking at your well-being in being a university student and the support networks that are available, and developing your academic skills. So look across the 4 weeks of orientation for the sorts of things that are available for you. So HLP 1540 doesn't have a set room or location, what that will tend to mean is that that lesson is being held online. So as you get the opportunity to jump into your flow pages, have a little look to see if the topic coordinator has given you information about that. And if not, I am a really good point of contact to actually come to. So in being the course coordinator, I oversee what the topic coordinators are doing. And if there are little things along the way that we need to refine, you can either contact the topic coordinator, or I've got that oversight of the things that are happening more broadly across your degree, and we can make sure the information's available. But the first answer to that is that if there is no room, it will be an online lesson, and that information will come to you via the topic coordinator. Yeah, good question, Noah. What I might do is I'll get onto the orientation planning group and ask them if more tours are being offered. That will be one of those funny situations where COVID has restrictions on how many people can be in each group for us. If tours don't get organised, I've actually got a sneaky idea in my back pocket where we might ask some of our existing 2nd, 3rd and 4th year students to offer to take some extra tours, particularly for phys ed students, because you do spend quite a bit of time down at that Sturt campus as well. Okay, so have a look at that orientation planner and what you can actually organise for yourselves and what events you're going to attend, but also look at our opportunity for our online welcome hub. So this is a place where students can work with other current students and drop in to actually ask a range of different questions. You've jumped in through your orientation planner in one way or another to get to this session, and it's really similar for those welcome hubs. It's a really good place to ask lots of questions about the specifics of kind of starting at university, but the beauty is that that's available right throughout the 4 weeks of orientation. So I'll do my best to keep answering a range of these questions as we go, but you might get to Thursday and think, oh my gosh, I've got some more questions. Our online welcome hubs are a really good opportunity to jump in and ask some of those as well. Bedford Park, is that next to the Law and Commerce building? Yes, it is. And thanks for clarifying that one for us as well, Will. So education is right up the top of the hill. Law and Commerce is the next one down. We also have on the orientation website a range of videos available for you. One of the things that our Student Success Working Group Coordinator, Ali Enright, so she's one of our wonderful staff in psychology, she has spent a lot of time thinking about how we can support you through this process of kind of an adjusted orientation, and she's designed a video that takes you through a range of kind of how to do some of these things that we're talking about now, how to access parking, how to get online, and we actually have done a bit of a video tutorial for that. So jumping onto that orientation website and going to the video library gives you access to some of the more detailed information about exactly how to do some of these things that I'm kind of referring to and asking you to think about before you start next week. The third thing that we've got in here is this idea that help is available, and knowing where that help is available can be really important, because at times Flinders and university in general can get overwhelming. You'll get lots of information from the university as a whole, from our college, from your topic coordinators, and you might have some really specific ways that you're thinking about whether you have a disability that has been identified, and there are things that we can do to support your learning. Whether you're an elite athlete and you've got competing demands around training and being at university, whether you're not feeling 100% and you want someone to talk to, there are a range of different support networks. So a couple of things that I draw your attention to. Firstly is finding your way at Flinders. This is a Flinders Learn Online page, so it's like you've enrolled into it as a topic, and you can access this flow page at any point that you like. The beauty of this flow page is it's not associated with a specific topic. It's actually about helping you to build the skills relevant to being successful at university. And I would really encourage you to go and check out Finding Your Way at Flinders, but know that it's there, that you can come back to at any time to look for some of those kind of quick tips and helps, right down to things like, how do I submit an assignment? And it will give you an opportunity to practice these things without it being having any consequences attached to it. So really good opportunity to actually upskill yourself in relation to some of the things that you'll do. I won't play this video right now. It goes for about 7 minutes, and I'd love to actually keep working through the information and showing you what we need to look at and have you ask questions. But do know that this video is embedded in the slides for you to be able to access. And you can look at what are the kind of support networks that are on offer, but realistically, it's also what I'm working through with you right now. Oasis is one of our student wellbeing initiatives. It's our dedicated student wellbeing centre. It is a physical place, but it's also an online space too. They work around their 3 pillars of community and diversity, faith and spirituality, and mental and physical wellbeing. Oasis realistically is there to say, we are not associated with the topics that you're studying. We are not your lecturers, your workshop coordinators. We are staff that are dedicated to supporting your wellbeing and anything that sits under those banners. They run a range of mindfulness sessions across the year. They run studyology, which is like a jump into this idea of how I can be better at not procrastinating and organising my time. They do mental fitness sessions. They have chaplaincy. I would encourage you that before, and if you're going, you know what, I'm 100% confident about what's going on at university, just drop in, check it out, see what they're about and what they're doing. You can access them on campus, but in the first instance, I'd say jump into one of those links and see what the sorts of things are that they have on offer. And then once you feel more comfortable with the way that the university is set up, you might actually drop in and check out the space that they have. I've certainly gone down there before just to have a coffee with the guys that run it, because it's a nice place to actually be. And there are dedicated student spaces where you can guarantee that you won't run into staff, which sometimes can be a nice thing as well. Another thing that's on offer right from the beginning is the Oguide program. So this is designed to help you settle into Flinders life, and it uses current students to mentor you as new students. I would recommend jumping on the Oguide site, and you'd notice that a lot of these things are just extensions from the standard Flinders website, but the link is there for you to gain the information, and it's an excellent opportunity to find support in as many places as you possibly can. The other thing to recognise is that safety is really important at Flinders, and we do actually take it fairly seriously. And that's safety in a range of forums and in a range of contexts. So safety online is a really important one, and we have policies around being safe on campus, as well as demonstrating safe and respectful behaviours in online forums. You can actually email for some more information around safety specifically, or look for student support that if you feel that you're not being treated equally, or you have an issue with a particular staff member or situation at the university, that there are ways of actually going about sharing that information confidentially. Generally, the kind of hierarchy of approaching people for support is to go to your topic coordinators and ask them for support, go to your tutors. You can then at the next level access myself as the course coordinator. And then there are means to go further than that. But if this is something you think, you know what, I just actually want to talk to someone about something I'm unsure of, and I don't really want to connect with the people specifically in my topics, going to some of your equal opportunity advisors or FUSA, the Flinders University Student Association, are really good ways of actually broaching that conversation in the first instance and keeping things anonymous to start with. Okay, I'm going to pause for a second and I'm going to look through some of the things that are in the chat. If you've got any fresh questions, please do. But it's a really good opportunity for us to pause because I've got about 8 slides left, and these are things that are now more so specific exactly to your degree. So some things I'll show you around what topics to enroll into, what things should look like, and then some opportunities coming into that. So just take 1 minute. If there are any burning questions that I haven't addressed, chuck those back up in the chat. Yeah, that's a really good question to look at, Will, there, because there are specific things around some of your educational focus topics, and this will become more obvious on the next slide that I have for you. Be really important to actually track your way through completing those because there'll be requirements prior to attending placements. So I can give you a specific suggestion around that. And sometimes it's thinking about, you know what, I might not work with my minor or one of my minors to start with, just so that I am doing what I need to prepare for my placements. Yeah, good question, Bronnie. And what you can do is you can actually access our student enrolment support officers in the college to address your specific situation. We can come up with some general plans, but we try not to do that because there are so many combinations of what part-time might look like for people in terms of 1, 2, 3, or 4 topics per semester, whether they track that the same the whole way through, etc., etc. So I'll show you where to actually place that inquiry specifically for your exact situation. Yeah, good question, Thomas. So there's a couple of ways to actually approach that. One of those is thinking about whether there's support for accommodation, and you can access the Flinders Uni accommodation group to look at whether that's going to be something that's of support to you. I would need to do some more specific investigating, but I think one of our scholarships does actually address supporting people that are coming from rural or remote areas. The other thing to consider is, well, for everyone, and I know this is kind of the opposite of your question, but there are some scholarships available when you do your placements if you're looking to go rurally or remotely to support the move back that way as well. So there are some things, but the specifics of that will be in some of the scholarship information. But if you want to, Thomas, please do feel free to send me an email so that I can actually follow that one up with you a little bit more directly. Yeah, good question, Will. And I think it will be a good opportunity for me to start moving through the slides again in a second, in that, yes, some of the core topics are transferable across other education degrees. And I'll get a bit more specific about that in the next slide. Very few end of year or end of semester exams are still. Most of the education topics actually work on assessment by assignment. And I can probably only think off the top of my head of one of the physical education topics that runs an exam. Okay, I'll keep bumping through some of these slides here. What I've got up on the page is what would look like, to start with, a really confusing setup of a whole bunch of numbers and letters. But what this is this is a full degree study planner for a standard full-time enrollment load. The way these are set out is that, and I might be able to see my cursor here, but at the top left, we've actually got year 1 of your degree. And as you track across that table, it shows you what you're looking to enroll in for first semester as the first row, and underneath that is second semester of year 1. You can then track that through for year 2, year 3, year 4. All this second table is what I've tried to identify for you, is that in the our degree specifically, and this is probably back on this page here, is that you will have one major learning area, which is either physical education or health education. You then have 2 minors. One of those minors will be PE or health, whichever is not your major, plus then a second learning area. What we've done this for, and why it's separate to just the standard secondary degree, is that we want to make sure that you are specialists in both health and physical education studies. We've noted that across the state over many years, that when health and physical education is thought about as one subject, which it is in the Australian curriculum, that health education can often be kind of the poorer cousin to physical education. So we've bulked out how many things you do in health and physical education, but to then give you an opportunity for another learning area outside of that. Once you graduate as a teacher, you have this second minor option in those kind of options that are outlined there. So that second table on the right hand side that I've got is saying that in the pink blocks, which is your third teaching area or your second minor, you've got these options that you can elect. If you elect English, these are the topics you'll choose to track that English minor along the way. The second table that I've got there is for the health as a major option. So the first one identifies in green the 8 topics for a major of physical education, 4 topics in yellow for a minor of health, and 4 topics in pink, which will be your elected minor. The blue topics are all your core educational subjects or topics. And that's the question I think, Will, that you were asking, is are topics transferable across those education degrees? Those ones in blue are, to an extent. So you can see in year 1 second semester that understanding and teaching diverse learners in a secondary setting starts to become a little bit specific to working with a specific group of people in schools. And it may be the case that if you wanted to transfer to primary education, that you may need to undertake the specific one for that particular degree. But there aren't too many instances where that's the case. Where you start to become a little bit more locked in, or where things aren't as transferable, is when you get to year 3 and year 4 of your studies and you do specific curriculum investigations in your topics leading into placements, and that's where it would become more apparent. The second option there is just showing you that if you chose health as your major and physical education as a minor, what the topics are that you'd take. But again, that's something that is transferable across the first 2 years. If you went, you know what, I started with health as a major, now I want phys ed as my major, it's actually not that difficult right up until year 3, because the minor for both of those options is the same as the first 4 topics of the major. So what I mean by that is, if you started with phys ed as your major, you would do these 4 topics, 15, 30, 31, 35, 31, and 25, 31. You would do those leading towards your major. But then if you went, you know what, I want health as my major, you would have done those 4 topics. You also would have done the 4 topics for the minor in health, and you could simply continue with a major in health at that point in time. So there are a few ways about doing things, but I would suggest that you follow the study template as closely as possible. This is also just a brief introduction to our student services team. So these guys do an amazing job, and they're the people that will be on the end of any of your Ask Flinders requests. So when you log into Okta, that main portal that takes you to your email, to your flow pages, to your V permit, Ask Flinders is one of those in there as well. And that is the key place to submit any of your requests around, I'm going part-time, I'm definitely going to do 2 topics. Can I have support actually constructing a study plan for myself? So Ask Flinders is the one to actually look out for. I'll also give you just a really quick introduction to Landtight. It is something that's mandated by the federal government. Landtight is the literacy and numeracy test for initial teachers. So in Australia, it's a requirement that all initial teacher education students complete this to register with our teacher registration board in South Australia. It's 2 tests, and they are 3 hours each. So a literacy one and a numeracy one. What we have indicated is that you must pass both components of Landtight by the midpoint of your course. So if you're full-time, that means the end of second year. But if you're part-time, it's about how many topics you've completed, not just getting to the end of the second year of you being here. It's actually about completing those 16 topics, 4 in first semester, first year, 4 in second semester, etc., etc. So midpoint of your degree. There is loads of support now with Landtight. We've gotten quite good at actually setting this up, and Anne Spencer's done an amazing job. So this will be an important slide to come back to look at what are all the opportunities for support along the way. I'll jump through just quickly these last couple of slides, and then I'll jump back into the chat box, just being conscious that we've got about kind of 5 more minutes. I'm happy to hang around for a little bit longer, but some of you might have things that you've got on planned specifically. One thing I'd love to draw your attention to, even though you haven't started yet, you're a first-year student, we have opportunities to become course representatives. What this means is you become a voice for your peers, and we want and we strive to have representatives for every degree. So you're in a degree particularly where I have a vested interest, I'm the course coordinator, but we love the opportunity to have students from every year level be a course representative. And what that means is you become this real conduit between students in the same place as you as first years and other students in your degree and myself, where we can be really creative about solving problems that people might encounter along the way. So I would strongly encourage you that if you're somebody that's been interested in student representative councils before, you're interested in being a part of kind of the progression of your degree and the design of particular initiatives, go and check it out. Applications close March the 11th, and it's monitored by FUSA as to what you actually have to do. You can navigate through College of Education, Psychology, Social Work once you get onto the FUSA website and look for student representation opportunities. I will remind you of this in week 1 because I think it's an immensely important opportunity, and one that's really fantastic for your kind of own development as well. You get a really good insight into what happens in the background of things. You do get invited to a range of meetings with staff as well to be the representative student voice. And you can work towards particular awards at the university that these kind of service roles count towards. I put this slide at the end here because this is a couple of key reminders in that we've gone through 33 slides, but there's probably 4 key things that I want you to be able to go back to once you finish kind of reviewing this presentation. Check out the orientation website. There's a link there for you, and that's where you can organise how you're engaging over the next 4 weeks. Go and check out what Compass is. Compass is kind of your own online diary. It's a place that communicates with when your assignments are due. You can personally set it up. Go and check out what Compass is, and we explain it in a bit more detail in that video that I was talking about on the orientation website. Finding your way at Flinders is that Flinders Learn Online page that I referred to, where you can practice things like submitting assignments. You can have a look at the way these flow pages are set up. You can familiarise yourself with some of the requirements of kind of academic work at the university. And the 4th thing is that Oguide Program. Know that those mentors are there and that they can support you in a range of ways from their own experiences. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing this screen and I'm going to dedicate myself now to that chat box. Whoops, that's the wrong one there. Stop share. And my face will probably come up on the screen again. Sharing video, beautiful, there we go. Okay, so over to you guys, and I'm going to jump in and answer a range of those questions. So are the literacy and numeracy tests redoable if they have failed? Yes, they are, Will. What we tend to say is that you get the opportunity to resit them once. To resit them again, so for your 3rd attempt, there does need to be kind of a request from the university, and Anne Spencer supports you through that process. We do have a very low fail rate of people just not being able to get through them, but it has occurred. People have then taken up the option to exit with what we call a Bachelor of Educational Studies, which doesn't give you the opportunity to register as a teacher, but to work in educational settings in a range of different ways. I would like to think that there are lots of opportunities where we will actually support you before we even start asking about kind of 3rd round land type testing. But yes, you can resit them. Should we have one of the minor topics on our timetable now, Archie? Only if you have enrolled in 2nd semester as well. So in 2nd semester, one of your other minor topic areas would sit there, but it wouldn't be appearing on your timetable for 1st semester. In 1st semester, you would have those 2 education topics, the EDUC coded ones. You would also then have 1 physical education topic, 1530, and 1 health topic, 1540. Yeah, so Caleb, what we've looked at is that all lectures will be held online. That will be done in a couple of different ways. So some will be live streamed. If that's the case, they will also be recorded. You'll see when you jump into Foundations that I've actually gone on walks and recorded kind of the key concepts and ideas checking out a national park at the same time. So they'll look a couple of different ways, but yes, lectures online at this point in time. Yeah, no, not necessarily, Olivia. Now, all topic coordinators will have different opinions on how much they want you to be able to interact during lectures, but the reality is that we need to record them. Yep, so we will record them. I've just got a notification that it said I'll be disconnected in approximately 5 minutes. So please know that you can email me any follow-ups to this, that this recording will be held in that video library in the orientation website. But yes, welcome that if we do get cut off to actually email me as well any further questions. Yeah, good question, Emma. So if you've got things like your elite athlete approvals, it's really good just giving your topic coordinators a heads up when something is coming up. So communicate ahead of time as much as possible. We do get notified from the elite athlete support group which students are approved. But what tends to happen is we know that, but then a reminder of certain things coming up is really important. There'll be specific details in your plan about what you're allowed to request around extensions. And so when you go into Flinders Learn Online, in the pages for the subjects, there's an opportunity to ask for extensions for assignments. You'll just say, as per my elite athlete agreement, and you'll attach your elite athlete agreement. And then we go, yep, cool, everything's above board, and we approve that. And the system will recognize it, and it will adjust your due date accordingly. Generally, no, Ella. So generally, there's not lots of back-to-back things where you need to catch the loop bus. But that will be one of those things just to keep your eye on when you're doing your enrollments and things like that. To be perfectly honest, the university generally, and this is not written as a rule, we generally try to work on starting everything on the hour that is dedicated and finish 10 minutes prior to kind of the hour rolling over for our topics, but that is not a standard written rule. It's just something that often we try to do to give you the opportunity to move between classes. Would the workshops online be live streamed? That will depend on each of the topics, Olivia. So that would be something to have a look out for in the flow pages and the communication that will come from your topic coordinators. I have not provided exactly what is happening on my flow page, so I know that that's something that will be coming out in the next day or two. So that may be the case with a couple of topic coordinators. We're still working with a few of our COVID requirements, keeping in mind that we're really keen to get people on campus where we can, particularly around physical education. Yeah, so seminars in 1530, I will hold a range of the seminars from weeks 1 to 4 online, just to give you that opportunity to kind of keep your space around COVID and do those sorts of things and minimize the confusion of bits and pieces. But my plan at this point will be lectures online, seminars online, and where I can, workshops face-to-face. But I think let's keep the specific information to each topic inside of the topic flow pages, just so you can double check that with each of the topic coordinators. That's an interesting one, Abby. So that might be worth, if there are other classes available, but they're just full, that would be something that's a really valid request to ask Flinders, to say I need to get into one of the classes that is full. If one is online, that's a case where you'll be able to watch the recording back at a later time. And if not, I would suggest putting in an Ask Flinders request anyway, just to say I can't see a way that this clash can be managed. Can someone support me with that? And that will be one where we can sit down with you and actually have a look at it. Yeah, no, Will. So our physical education students are often really highly sought after. This is the first year that the degree has been titled for just physical education, but we've had a similar option in the past. A lot of the time they become specialists in primary school, so phys ed specialists, but also with that third learning area, you may acquire a job in your third learning area. And then as you work kind of in that school, you may be put into different roles over the time that you're actually in there. So we've had lots of instances in schools where we've looked at that third learning area, or we've looked at health and physical education, but also that people have worked within business as educational advisors with their expertise, particularly around kind of Australian Sports Commission associated groups. Yeah, awesome. Don't stop the questions board. I will say